Somewhere in a drawer in your parents' house, there is a photo of you. You are maybe 2 years old. You are laughing at something, or crying about something, or reaching for something you desperately wanted. Your parents remember that day. They can tell you exactly what happened, but you cannot. You have no memory of it at all. Not a flicker, not a feeling, nothing. You probably assume you just forgot. A bad memory, like a bad knee or bad eyesight. But the real answer is far stranger than forgetting. Your brain did not lose those years. It never filed them away in the first place. And the reason why touches almost every memory you will ever make for the rest of your life. Scientists call this infantile amnesia. The term itself is over a century old. Sigmund Freud coined it in the early 1900s, and even he was puzzled by it. Here was a period of life packed with first experiences, first words, first steps, and yet adults walked around with almost none of it intact. Freud guessed it had something to do with repression, with the mind hiding things too uncomfortable to keep. Modern neuroscience tells a very different story, and it starts with a part of your brain you have probably never thought about. It is called the hippocampus. Picture it as a small curved structure tucked deep in your brain, shaped a little like a seahorse. Its job is to take the scattered pieces of an experience, the sound, the smell, the emotion, and stitch them together into one retrievable memory. Without it, an experience just dissolves. It happened, but it never becomes a memory in the way you understand the word. Here is the strange part. In a toddler, that stitching machine is still under construction. The hippocampus is not finished developing until roughly your 3rd or 4th year of life, and in some ways it keeps refining itself well into adolescence. So when you were 2, your brain was experiencing everything fully. You felt the joy. You felt the fear. But the machinery that would have locked those moments into long-term retrievable storage simply was not ready yet. Does that mean the memories are gone forever, sitting somewhere unreachable? Or were they never properly created at all? For decades, researchers could not agree. Then, in 2014, a team led by neuroscientist Paul Frankland at the University of Toronto found a clue, and it came from an unexpected place: baby mice. Frankland's lab discovered that the infant brain produces new neurons in the hippocampus at an extraordinary rate, a process called neurogenesis. This rapid neuron growth is wonderful for learning. It is terrible for keeping old memories intact. Each new neuron essentially rewires the existing memory circuits, overwriting the connections that older memories depended on. The team found that when they slowed neurogenesis in young mice, the animals kept their earliest memories far longer than normal. When they sped neurogenesis up in older mice, those animals started forgetting recent memories the way infants do. In other words, your brain was not failing to remember your toddler years. It was too busy building itself to protect them. The same explosive growth that let you learn language, recognize faces, and understand that objects continue to exist even when hidden from view, that same growth was quietly erasing the very experiences fueling it. Construction and demolition happening in the same building at the same time. But neurogenesis is only half the story. The other half is about something you did not have yet: a sense of self. Psychologist Carole Peterson at Memorial University of Newfoundland has spent decades tracking children's earliest memories, interviewing the same kids years apart to see which memories survive and which quietly vanish. Her research points to something fascinating. A memory is far more likely to stick once a child has developed a stable sense of me, a narrative identity that experiences can attach themselves to. Before that sense of self solidifies, around age 3 or 4, experiences have nowhere permanent to land. They are orphan events. There is no main character yet for the story to belong to. Think about what that means. A memory is not just a recording. It is a recording with an owner. And for the first few years of your life, you had not yet finished becoming the owner. Language plays its own role here too. Psychologist Patricia Bauer at Emory University has shown that children's ability to talk about an experience dramatically increases the odds they will still remember it years later. Before you had words, your memories of an event existed as fragments of sensation and emotion with no narrative thread to tie them together. Once language arrived, you gained a kind of internal recorder, the ability to talk to yourself about what happened. Memories that got verbalized in those early years, even when the child was barely old enough to speak in full sentences, were more likely to survive into adulthood than memories that were never put into words at all. So 3 separate forces were working against your earliest memories at once. A hippocampus still under construction, a self not yet stable enough to anchor experiences to, and a vocabulary too thin to lock events into language. Is it really so strange then that almost nothing survived? Here is the counterintuitive twist. Some researchers now believe those early memories are not entirely gone. They may still exist, buried in neural patterns, just permanently out of reach, like a book written in a language you have since forgotten how to read. Frankland's mouse studies found something remarkable. Under very specific lab conditions, supposedly forgotten infant memories could sometimes be reactivated. The information had not vanished. The pathway to retrieve it had simply been buried under newer construction. This raises an unsettling question. If your earliest memories still technically exist somewhere in your brain, what does it actually mean to say you have forgotten them? Maybe forgetting was never really about deletion. Maybe it was always about access. And this is where the ancient mirrors the present far more closely than you would expect. Think about how much of your earliest self you only know secondhand. The stories your parents tell about what you were like at 18 months. The home videos you have watched so many times that you have started mistaking them for memories. Psychologists have a name for this phenomenon: source confusion. You absorb the family story so thoroughly that it starts to feel like your own recollection, even though the original experience never actually got encoded as a memory at all. In a very real sense, the version of yourself from those first years exists more in other people's heads than it ever did in yours. That should change how you think about identity itself. You like to believe you are the sum of your memories, that your personal history forms a continuous thread back to your very first moment of consciousness, but the thread does not actually go back that far. It begins somewhere around age 3 or 4, sometimes later, and everything before that point is a story stitched together from other people's recollections, photographs, and home videos, rather than anything you personally lived through and can recall. There is something almost comforting in that, if you sit with it long enough. You did not lose those years through some failure of memory. You were never meant to keep them in the first place. Your brain was busy doing something far more important than recording footage. It was building the very architecture that would let you remember everything that came after. Every joke you laughed at in 4th grade, every heartbreak in your 20s, every face you still recognize from decades ago, all of it exists because the hippocampus, the sense of self, and the language center finally finished enough construction to start holding on to things permanently. So the next time someone shows you a photo of yourself as a toddler and asks if you remember that day, you can tell them the truth. You do not remember it because you were never supposed to. That child in the photo was living through a version of you that had not yet built the tools to look back. In a strange way, that should not feel like a loss at all. It should feel like proof that your mind was doing exactly what it needed to do, quietly assembling the machine that would one day let you remember almost everything else. Somewhere in a drawer in your parents' house, there is still that photo of you. You still will not remember the day it was taken, but now you know the reason was never forgetting. It was becoming.